Hello everyone, my name is Denise and today I'll be talking on the topic modes of discourse, widespread cognitive restructuring. Okay, so first, let's talk about this man on the left, this handsome man here called Michel Foucault. He's a French philosopher, intellectual, and writer. He was born in 1926 and lived till 1984. So he coined this term modes of discourse. So what is it? It is the words you use, the way you talk. And mostly it is what the a manner of talking in order to promulgate the values of those in power and to keep them in power. Okay, so Michel Foucault was also famous for doing an archaeology of values, which means that he studied values that were acceptable throughout the ages, like sexuality. Things that are acceptable today may not have been acceptable hundreds of years ago and may have been acceptable 1,000 years ago. So he went into deep archaeology of all these values, especially with regard to sexuality, criminality, and insanity, which means that things that used to be acceptable sexually may not be acceptable today, or those that used to be actually acceptable today was actually criminal in the past. Okay, so let's just give you an example. So for example, okay, let me just move my screen a bit. In ancient Greece, it was actually acceptable for young adolescent male to have sex with adults, okay? Which means that even before 15 years old, they're just very small boys to have sex with adult males, okay? So yes, the truth is homosexuality is still acceptable as it is today, but then having sex with teenagers was actually okay, but today it's actually criminal. Like here, a piece of news from Channel News Asia about how a former DJ Discourse is jailed for having sex with 4 teenage boys. So this is an example of how values that used to be acceptable in the past are no longer acceptable today, and how it evolves with time. And he did that in a way also to prove that values itself is not objective and it shifts with time, and it is so-called sculpted using modes of discourse. The way we talk about it actually influences our values. Okay, so regarding sexuality, and so what is considered criminal, like in this case, see, you can see DJ Kosh is going into jail. He is now considered a criminal, but if he actually lived like maybe 2,000-3,000 years ago in Greece, he would have been totally okay, considered a member of a higher society. Okay, next up. So let me try to explain it using an example. Okay, let's talk about the topic of beauty. This really happened to me at one point in my life. So I'm not going to use real names. I'm just going to use fictitious names, okay? So think about two friends I had. One friend, her name is, let's call her Bella. And the other friend, I'm going to call her Priscilla. So Bella and Priscilla. So Bella, she's a more athletic girl, and she doesn't like to put on so much makeup. She's like me. We like to be as simple as possible, and we feel like it's important to be comfortable in our own skin. If we put on too much makeup, I would feel that I might look over the top. Okay. So okay, next up on the other lane, there's Priscilla. For her, it is important to doll herself up. When she puts on makeup, which she does every single time she leaves the house or goes in public, she has to wear lots of makeup. So that is her way of talking about this, is that she's very dolled up, and now she's being respectful to those around her. So when Priscilla looks at Stella, Bella, she would say that, oh, this is plain Jane, plain Jane. So when Bella looked at Priscilla, he would say, oh, she's over the top. I don't want to be like her. Okay. So both are fairly neutral regarding a neutral topic, which is beauty. And they both have a way of talking about this topic, which is beauty. So imagine all the Bellas, people who are like-minded, maybe myself, right, in this camp, we tend to surround ourselves with people who are like-minded, and hence we talk about it in that way. We're so comfortable in our own skin. And look at those people on the right, they are so over the top. Okay, and then those on the right, which are all the makeup people, right? Oh, we're also dolled up. Look at those people who don't even care about themselves. They look so plain Jane. So, okay, that's not bad in the culture that no one is trying to assert their dominance on the other. You get, okay, fairly equal expression. You can get to choose what you want to be. But however, what if somehow there is an asserting of power and influence to assert some kind of dominance, okay? So then the voice, which is I'm dolled out, she's plain Jane, becomes very loud. And then the I'm comfortable in my own scheme, she's over the top, that voice becomes smaller, okay? So, and society just keeps talking in this kind of, in this mode of discourse, which is women who are daughter are respectful and that's what they should be like. They should be like that. So then it causes slowly for society as at large to shift towards this particular trend, which is to buy more makeup, dress up more ostentatiously. Okay, so this is a bit of a very mild form of what Michel Foucault was trying to tell us all. Okay, so let's talk about another more juicy topic, polygamy in China. So yes, China has like all the Confucius values. So monogamy is something that is promulgated for thousands of years, but somehow along the way, the more rich and powerful actually managed to introduce polygamy in. Okay, so it's something used to be exclusive, like you see on the left, to the emperor and all his wives and concubines, right? The queen and all the concubines. It's commonplace. You see that even in today, all our or the Chinese drama, there's plenty of stories about all the concubines fighting with each other. So polygamy was actually quite widespread, not only amongst the those in the noble class, but also eventually to all the rich businessmen and all that, and all those with power. They tend to have many wives. It was very common and acceptable up to you see maybe less than 100 years ago, until the rise of communism. They wanted to introduce a more egalitarian approach to elevate the status of women. So then it became a more westernized approach, right? Like we borrowed the Judeo-Christian tradition from the European countries, and we wanted to promulgate monogamous marriage. Since Angela Baby and her husband. So these days, if you're going to go around saying that I have multiple wives, you'll be considered immoral. But that is something actually fairly new, if you want to be very honest about it, because even up to 100 years ago, which means there are people still alive today who are the children of people who have been in polygamous marriages or the grandchildren. So you say, my mom, she's the second wife, my mom is the third wife, and was actually an okay social construct until up to recently. So maybe some of you don't know that. So today you find out. Okay, next up. Okay, but these days, if you dare to even try to bring polygamy back onto the question or the discussion plane, right? The Chinese government is going to shut you down. Let's talk about this Chinese academic Bao Yinan from East China University. He started to talk about bringing polygamy back again. See, that authorities should give university professors special treatment, for example, allowing them to have multiple spouses. So eventually that was condemned heavily as immoral on the radio and TV and in print, okay? Because it is something that is now hush hush. It's like our silent, terrible China embarrassing history. Okay, so we're not going to bring that back now. We're just happily pretending that we've been monogamous all the way. Okay, let's just go back all the way back to our Confucius roots. We're monogamous all the way. When in fact, right, like not only like in China, but even in Singapore, in Malaysia, it is still quite commonplace for rich businessmen to have multiple families, one in Singapore, one in Malaysia, maybe not all legal marriages, but they have their wives not only there to produce male heirs for them, but also to typically to manage their businesses or their finances. This is still a trend that's going on, although it's not much talked about. Okay, next up. Okay, so some key points at this juncture. Modes of discourse can be likened to widespread cognitive restructuring. So this is something that we use in therapy. Like if you see someone who's very depressed or very anxious, they tend to have hyperbolic, magnified thoughts of disaster and all that. So we try to change the way they think by changing the way they talk about their problem. Like, I'm so anxious. When I go out, I'm worried that there will be snakes that will kill me. The snakes will come out and they're gonna be a big threat to me. For example, if it's a snake phobia. So we talk about it, we size down the problem, like, well, you're right, snakes still exist, they're not extinct, but your chances of meeting a snake are very low, so you are still quite safe. So that is, in a way, our own cognitive restructuring one-to-one. But modes of discourse can be widespread cognitive restructuring. That means you change a whole society's way of thinking about a topic and hence change their actions and their behavior regarding a topic. Okay, so these days, even no matter how rich you are, even if you're a very rich Chinese businessman, it's still frowned upon if you're going to tell people openly that you have multiple wives. Okay, because of the modes of discourse these days, you'll be considered immoral. Okay, next up, there is a need to for free speech to modulate the imposition of values on culturally weaker groups. So remember Michel Foucault said it's like an assertion of power. Like for example, I told you, remember Bella versus Priscilla? Priscilla is the one that's more dolled up, right? Maybe she became a more powerful group. So she was asserting her own values onto all the Bellas. So some of them are forced to also start to wear a lot of makeup to suit society's norms. Okay, so one way of doing that is to curtail free speech. So anybody who dares to say that I'm comfortable in my own skin, ooh, that's so immoral. How dare you say that disgusting thing? You're actually just not putting in enough effort and you're not respectful to those around you. You are not comfortable in your own skin. Something like that. You just change the way people talk about a topic and it actually shifts the value of the whole society. So it is also important for us to surround ourselves with those who think differently from us as a means of check and balances. Because remember the Bella and the Priscilla group, the Bella is always surrounding herself with others who think like her. So that forms a very group think. And then after a while, they have their own way of talking, they become very isolated. So it's important to actually once in a while listen to what the other side is thinking. And so it is also good to spend time thinking about your own values so that there's something firm to stand on. For example, if I'm Denise, I have my own values, but if I happen to be born in Greece 3,000 years ago where homosexual sex between a child and an adult is allowed, maybe I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with that. Even the whole society is okay with that, I'm not okay with that. I need to know my own values. It's important, okay? Okay, next up, this, in case you don't know what cognitive restructuring is, it comes from a modality like cognitive behavior therapy. It believes that our thinkings are related to our feelings and our actions, right? So if we can change the person's thoughts, like regarding the snakes, right? Like what are your chances of getting bitten by snakes? Then also change your actions. You'll be more likely to want to go out more. Also change your feelings, right? When you go out more and you realize, hey, actually there are not so many snakes out there, then she'll feel safer. Then it will also then influence the thoughts. So that is what cognitive restructuring is. So by changing modes of discourse, it actually changes a society's thoughts at large. So let's think about this. Okay, talk about the topic of foot binding, feet binding in China. It was introduced arguably around the 10th century, which means been around for 1,000 years. That they consider ladies with small feet very attractive. So from a young age, they bind the feet. You see, this is a old lady. She's still living. She's one of the last relics of the past. They used to like deform the feet like that so that it can fit into tiny little shoes around 11 cm. So these are the ladies. So that was the conception of beauty. It is not only the small feet, it's the way they walk in a very elegant, clumsy way. And also the way if they bound their feet when they're very young, the way their hips and their thighs are formed will change as they go through puberty. So apparently that enhances the sexual experience for the men, but in short, this is still kind of a foot fetish, and it actually affects the mobility of the woman. So that's a basic human right, for human woman to be able to walk properly. So, but women and their families were willing to to deform the bodies in that way so that they can be more suitable for marriage to rich families. Okay, it became a status symbol. It was only, I think, the 1920s when a lot of Christian missionaries came in and said, oh my goodness, you Chinese people, why are you doing that? It is none of the world is doing that. It's only you guys been doing that for the last 1,000 years. You have to stop it. And slowly, they finally managed to break out of it. So if I was born like 100 years ago in China, because I'm Chinese, right? I probably have bound foot. So thank goodness. So society's values now have changed. So like good feet, healthy looking pedicure feet here. This is attractive now, no longer like small little tiny deformed feet. Huh? So you think that is barbaric. Okay, but let's move on to the next slide. So these days, right, there are a lot of, especially the last few years, there's a lot of chit chat, especially with the woke movement going along about people not being born in the right bodies. Like I'm a male, but I'm actually born in a female body. So in that case, I need a surgery to correct it because there's something wrong with my body. I need to fix it. So how do you see this whole topic of Michel Foucault modes of discourse coming in? You see, the way we call this kind of surgery, we call it gender affirming surgery, gender confirmation surgery, to push across the idea that there's something wrong with my body and I need to fix it so that my gender can be confirmed, that it can be now corrected. So this kind of surgery tends to, this modes of discourse, the way of talking about it tends to hide the real severity of the surgery involved, which actually involves, if you're a man, you'll be castrated. If you're a woman, there's probably double mastectomy, and then the forming of a fake penis using some tissue on your arm. This is what is happening, which if I go back to the one slide, right, I don't see how that is any much worse than deforming the feet of women through feet binding for 1,000 years. It's probably worse because you're now messing with their genitalia and their breasts, and for a man, his penis. So I think that is quite a painful thing, but it's starting to be on the rise. Okay, and how is it being on the rise? Modes of discourse, right? Like in the past, when we talk about feet binding, oh, now you're high class, attractive, elegant woman. So now you go for gender affirming surgery. It's actually good for you. It's fixing something that is broken. Your body is broken now, you need to fix it. So that's one way modes of discourse can be used in a wide scale way, not only in America, but now spreading around the whole world. Okay, next up. So these are smaller scale rationalization, not so much societal wide, but talking about a particular subculture. For example, there are particular subcultures in society that rationalizes adultery. So if you do talk to them, or you get, they tend to have a certain mode of discourse, a way of talking that tend to rationalize and neutralize the bad side of adultery. Well, adultery is such a scary word. So instead of saying that I'm having adultery, it's like, I'm married but I have a girlfriend. I work hard and I play hard. I subscribe to more traditional Chinese values, which means that it's okay to have multiple wives and concubines. I know where to draw the line. I go home every night. So I'm still a responsible man. So this way of talking is actually very common. I hear that all the time. It's rationalizing adultery. It is a mode of discourse that a certain group of subculture use to rationalize their behaviors. Okay, moving forward, let's take a look at this. Drug use as well. In the drug culture, which is a subculture in Singapore, there's this thing going on, their mode of discourse, the way they talk. Everybody uses drugs. Even the successful doctors and lawyers, they just hide it very well. I've had trauma before, so this is my way of coping. Don't look down on me and don't be judgmental. Or let's party like there's no tomorrow. You only live once. So this is a kind of a way they talk in the this more the subculture, and because of this mode of discourse, it becomes a more acceptable action to abuse drugs. Okay, so if you stay within this group of people talking this way, you tend to have higher risk of using drugs. And if I move back one slide, if you stay within your group of people talking this way, there's a higher risk of you committing adultery, as opposed to, let's say, if you go to church every Sunday or you go to the mosque every week and you meet other people who can just label it for what it is. It's adultery and it's bad for your family at large. It's going to hurt your children in the long run. Not going to try to rationalize it or to neutralize it. Okay. So some key takeaways. It is important to keep our minds sharp, to keep our eyes open and be aware of society's modes of discourse, because there are a lot of things that are mislabeled, like, gender affirming surgery, when in fact it is not possibly the best name for it, right? So we have to be aware of it and say, okay, so now they're trying to hide something, but I know what's really going on. Then be aware of your own values and stand firm on them. And when you find yourself straying too much to one end, it might be necessary to switch your friend group in order to expose yourself to new modes of discourse, because that will really help you to change your behavior. For example, if you are taking too much drugs, or you are using too much, not only makeup, but cosmetic surgery, and you don't want to keep going down that slippery slope, then you need to go to a new group with a new mode of discourse where they talk about, oh, you need to, yeah, it's great to be comfortable in your own skin. Well, I got a few more wrinkles and I think I'm beautiful as I grow old, right? Or like, oh, you don't need drugs. You yourself are enough. You're capable enough. You can survive without the drugs. And if you find yourself like, in the wrong place right now and you just cannot break free from your friendship circle, it's also okay to talk to your friends or to a therapist if needed. Okay, so that's all for today. I know today I touched on certain more controversial topics, but I hope that it's been helpful to you. Okay, and thank you so much. If you like this video, kindly press like, subscribe, and share with your friends.